It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. Of course, we begin here at home, as President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has maintained that the economic reforms which he embarked upon in the last 2 years are working and yielding the expected results, insisting that the worst is already behind the country, to mark the second year since he assumed office. The president dismissed recent concerns over fluctuating crude oil prices, which recently hit $58 per barrel, despite a $75 per barrel budget benchmark, pointing out that Nigeria's fiscal targets for 2025 remain on track. On the second anniversary of the administration, the president also declared zero value-added tax on key commodities such as food, education, healthcare, rent, among other essential commodities, in a bid to reduce the taxation burden on households. President Tinubu, who took office in May 2023, has embarked on a broad range of economic reforms, which, though seen as harsh on Nigerians, are largely acknowledged as being necessary. Well, meanwhile, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar yesterday scored the administration of President Bola Tinubu low, after spending 2 years in office saying his government has failed the people. In a statement he personally signed, Atiku, who said the opposition coalition members would not be silenced and that they would reject any attempt at a one-party state, dismissed the administration as the most incompetent, disconnected, and anti-people in the nation's history. While assessing the administration further, he said, and I quote, "This government has not only deepened poverty across the country, but it has also set new records in wasteful public spending." The former vice president also went on to say, and I quote, "Policy after policy under this administration has targeted the poor while providing relief and advantage to the rich. From healthcare to education to identity management and basic public services, Nigerians are now faced with class-based systems where the wealthy enjoy VIP treatment and the rest are left behind." End of quote. Now to ECOWAS. The leaders of the Economic Community of West African States have pledged their renewed commitment to advancing the region as the bloc marks its 50th anniversary in Lagos, Nigeria. The gathering served as a moment of reflection on ECOWAS's journey and a platform to chart a path for its future. Arise correspondent Punarimam Benjamin reports.
Established on May 28, 1975, in Lagos, Nigeria, then the nation's capital, the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, was born from the vision of 15 West African heads of state. Cabo Verde joined 2 years later in 1977, while Mauritania withdrew shortly after the treaty was signed. Nigeria played a pivotal role in the formation of the regional bloc under the leadership of then military head of state, General Yakubu Gowon. The founding goals were clear: to promote economic cooperation, enhance living standards, ensure regional integration, and drive development. Over the years, ECOWAS also took on a security mandate, responding to military takeovers and regional conflicts through its peacekeeping initiatives. As part of its Golden Jubilee, ECOWAS unveiled Vision 2050, a new development roadmap that replaces the outgoing Vision 2020, themed Stronger Together for a Brighter Future. The commemorative ceremony drew current and former heads of state, diplomats, international partners, and other dignitaries from around the world. Nigeria's president and chair of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, stressed the urgency of deeper unity, political will, and collective economic action to secure a prosperous future for the region.
In 1975, our founding father leaders envisioned a West Africa where borders unite rather than divide, a region of free movement, thriving trade, and peaceful coexistence. That vision is still alive today. Work together towards peace, prosperity, and justice.
In a heartfelt address, former Nigerian head of state and one of ECOWAS' founding fathers, General Yakubu Gowon, reflected on the ideals behind the 1975 Treaty of Lagos and called for a rededication to its original principles.
In recent years, we have witnessed the troubling resurgence of military coups in some of our member states. We thought that was over, but it seems as though personal ambition drives some people to do the wrong thing. But let me say this, belief in democracy is what I'm now advising.
The president of the ECOWAS Commission, Dr. Umar Toure, spotlighted the bloc's notable achievement, such as the free movement of people.
This Golden Jubilee does not mark an end. It represents a new beginning, the renewal of a promise of unity, integration, and shared prosperity for many more years. It is beautiful and wonderful to be together, because only together we can create the conditions for a brighter future for our region.
Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yusuf Tuga, described the next 50 years as a pivotal opportunity for regional transformation.
We need ECOWAS more than ever to meet the challenge of unfiltered data, unregulated cryptocurrency, AI, climate change, organized crime, cyber slavery, and human trafficking, and violent extremism.
Despite current difficulties, including the withdrawal of some member countries, the spirits at the ceremony remain hopeful. West African leaders reaffirmed their commitment to unity, cooperation, and a shared vision for a peaceful and a prosperous region. There is a fresh commitment by the ECOWAS leaders to ensure ECOWAS is more united, more organized, with inclusivity that is driven by its own terms. Punaraman Benjamin, Arise News.
All right, now finally, in our headlines, the Senate has passed the tax reform bills forwarded to it last October by President Bola Tinubu. The Senate passed the 4 tax bills after adopting the harmonized report of its Conference Committee on Finance. President Bola Tinubu had last week at the APC summit in the presidential villa challenged the leadership of the National Assembly to expedite legislative action on the 4 separate tax bills that seek to reform tax administration in the country.
Adopt the Conference Committee report on the tax reform bills as presented and as explained. Those in support of the adoption of the tax reform bill say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The tax reform bills are hereby adopted. The Chairman, Finance, members of the Conference Committee, I must thank you for your painstaking and detailed work on behalf of the Senate. We are doing it for the sake of future generations and for better approach to taxation in Nigeria. We believe strongly that your work will live after you.
After a long, arduous process, finally, we now wait for the president to assent to the tax reform bills. Of course, that's just formality. We know that this one is a done deal.
Truth is, these are one of the successes of this administration, the tax bill, and the fact that we allow for rigor in going through the process. Also, kudos to Tawo Yodele and kudos to President Tinubu for ensuring that this process, went smoothly. We heard every side, and we can just only wait for the revenue. Also, some of the successes of this administration is Bonga, like we talked about. Share reaching, a final investment decision on Bonga, that's coming in. A couple of other things. They said they started the coastal road, but let's not forget, there were a lot of back and forth. People's property destroyed, government claimed compensation. Some people say compensation has not still been paid. There's been a lot of back and forth as regards that. We're going to be commissioning the first stretch of 30 kilometers out of 700 kilometers of the coastal road. They also talk about the Naira policy, the fact that across the black market and the bank rates, the Naira prices are almost evening out. That we have not done. They say they're maintaining convergence, but that also comes with a lot of pain because there's a pass-through effect of inflation. I think part of the achievement they also touted is the fact that they got over 50 billion foreign investment, direct investment commitments, I don't believe it's right to count commitments. Let's actualize them. When you actualize them, we'll celebrate you. I'm a Nigerian. I want a lot of things to celebrate. I say the things that are good, but when things are not right, I also say them. Them saying they've neutralized over 13,000 terrorists. Yes, that's a good one. But on the flip side, we've seen an increase in insecurity. And this is quite very rampant across board. We've started to hear the resurgence of Boko Haram killings and maiming and destruction of life everywhere. The CBN said they've cleared over 7 billion, the currency backlog. That's a good plus. But at some point, some companies had complained that, they didn't put them on the list, but the CBN said they should wait, that the verification will go through. I think they finally completed that now. But let's now talk about some areas that are not okay. I know the government has financial challenges because of the slump in crude oil prices and all of that. The borrowing. When you see the estimates, the recent borrowing we have sent to the National Assembly is about 45 trillion cumulatively. Coupled with what we've borrowed before, that's well over 30 trillion. That money and that rate is burgeoning. It's increasing. The question is, how are we going to pay it back? The government also argues that, yes, our debt-to-service ratio has reduced tremendously from the over high 90% and all of that. They talk about the refineries. I will want them to also investigate what has gone on with the refineries. How can we spend over $2 billion and we hear that refineries are shutting down for maintenance, the World Refinery shut down at some point, and NNPC is still importing? Wasn't it best for them to have just diverted those investments more to the Dangote refinery and help them? Kudos to them on the bringing back of the crude for Naira deal, which has also helped, and you can see that the prices of petroleum products have reduced. But a lot more still needs to be done. Till today, they said they've spent a lot in humanitarian services and all of that. The question we should ask them, what about the Better Edu case? At least, if Better Edu is free from that case, they should be able to tell us from their investigations and let us know what has transpired. They talk about the presidential initiative with CNG. Some say, yes, it's worked, but the question is, how pervasive has it been? How many CNG stations do we have in Lagos? They talked about the fact that they're going to open the border for grains. Has that been pervasive? Yes, we've recorded some reduction in food prices, but inflation is still high. After the rebasing, inflation came down. There was an uptick recently. It also came down again. It's been a ding-dong affair. But you having interest rates at over 27%, it's a very high one. So the state of play of the economy is that. So it's a mixed bag. There's still a lot of part they should work on. They should not settle for less. They should try to do more for Nigerians. But collectively, the word on the street is a bingbawa, ongbengbewa, arawa oya, because access to healthcare and other problems are still there. Nigeria will survive, but we survive by telling ourselves the truth.
Okay, let me start with tax. The two chambers are coming together and harmonizing their resolutions, looking at gray areas, looking at areas of differences. In the 4 tax bills, there are 4 tax bills. The Nigerian tax bill, the tax administration bill, the Nigerian Revenue Service bill, and the Joint Revenue Board Establishment Bill of 2025. Now, at the House of Reps and the Senate, you have had these 2 committees coming together and harmonizing their resolutions. The effect of that is that they have now sent that to the president for assent. We cannot comment on the details until we see what the harmonization looks like. But we all know the history of these tax bills. The objective of which, for the Tinubu administration, was to modernize the taxation system in Nigeria to increase government revenue without putting more hardship on the people, and to widen the tax net. And what all of these bills for, taken together, despite the initial controversies have done, is just to modernize the taxation system in Nigeria. And it is instructive that in the press statement that was issued by the State House, that's the presidential bill today, to mark May 29. Taxation was a major issue there. And President Tinubu has told Nigerians that in terms of taxation, the objective is actually to alleviate the burden of Nigerians, to further empower small and medium-scale businesses, SMEs, or MSMEs, as they are otherwise known. And one of the objectives of this government is both tax reform, and that was led by Taiwo Oyedele and other members of that Taxation and Fiscal Committee that was established by President Tinubu, to the extent that President Tinubu tells us that tax to GDP ratio has risen from 10% to 13.5% under his watch. Fiscal deficit has also narrowed sharply from 5.4% of GDP to about 3% of GDP. So what President Tinubu has done through the statement that he issued this morning is to give an account. And he talked repeatedly about transparency and accountability. And this occasion of May 29 is being used to give an account to Nigerians. Now, other people who disagree can double-check that. Now, he also owned up to the fact that his government has been a reform-minded government. Reform either in health, where he talked about renewed hope health agenda, reform in the security sector, reform in terms of spending, reform in terms of managing, the economy, removal of subsidy, which was the main issue on May 29, 2023, when he assumed office, to say that, look, yes, Nigerians may be in pain, they may have faced a lot of harsh conditions, but Nigerians should be patient because he's committed to moving this country forward. And it was in that light that the president also, said this morning that there will be zero VAT. The VAT rate in Nigeria now is 7.5%. That's value-added tax. That there will now be zero VAT on food, on education, on healthcare, on rent. That part of rent should be underscored. I hope landlords who are still charging a VAT will know that the president of Nigeria this morning has said, no, there will be zero VAT on rent, so that people can, have a better welfare. Because of constraints on time, I would like to just comment generally that we would like to congratulate President Tinubu on the second anniversary of his emergence as president of Nigeria. One thing you can say for him is style. I think he has been a present-minded president. We had a president in this country for 8 years that was absent-minded. Ahead of the election, we were saying blah, 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 blue, blah, 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 blue. But it's not blah, bluing. It shows that he's a handsome president who knows what he's doing, who has an idea, and his work rate is very high, in my own assessment. People may complain, okay, he goes to France now and then, he disappears occasionally. But in terms of work rate, it's better than what we saw between 2015 and 2023. We have a president at least whose mind is present, whose mind is not wondering or is not behaving like he doesn't know what is going on. So I think that also is something to be said. And the optimism that he has preached this morning is something that we can look forward to. By the same token, we congratulate the governors of the states at the state level who are also celebrating second anniversary. The governors of Abia, for example, Enugu, Akwa Ibom, Rivers, Ebonyi, Taraba, Zamfara, Kano, Niger, Cross River. All these are governors, who are celebrating the second year in office. But, we imagine that other people we take on who are very familiar with those subnationals and make comments. And I want to use this opportunity on the occasion of this 26th anniversary of the return to democracy. In 1999, I was there. I'm not saying things that I don't know. When Nigerians resolved that never again would they have military rule, I think that we have seen some kind of consolidation of democracy. And then to congratulate very quickly, that's the personal side of it, the governor of Ogun State, who is celebrating 6th anniversary of his emergence as governor of Ogun State today, who is also celebrating his 65th birthday today. Governor Dakwa Abiodun is 65 today, and it's a multiple milestone. Today, the Ogun State Sports Festival, the Gateway Games, the 22nd National Sports Festival, is going to end, and it will be Governor Dakwa Abiodun presiding over that. Whatever hiccups we may have seen, I think Ogun State has done very well in this regard. ECOWAS at 50. I commented on ECOWAS at 50 yesterday, but just not to repeat myself, I think it was gratifying to see General Yakubu Gowon there, the only living founding father of ECOWAS. And I praise his commitment to the ECOWAS ideal. He's a true statesman. He's a true father, not just of the Nigerian nation, but also of the West African region. And finally, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar Waziri Adamawa complaining and giving an alternative view to President Tinubu's celebration today and saying, oh, he has destroyed Nigeria. Well, what do you expect the opposition to say? I think Waziri Adamawa should focus more on the issue about what platform will the coalition use, whether they will go into ADC or they will form the Amechi recommended ADA. But of course, people will have different points of view. But I think so far, so good. But we will be in a position to do a fuller assessment, and that assessment should be done by the Nigerian people in 2027.
Absolutely, but as we mark the midterm today, I believe the question should be posed to Nigerian people. Are you celebrating this milestone? I think that is the question that we need to throw out to the general public. Is this today a day of excitedness and celebration, or is it a somber day to reflect? Well, one thing I do have to give credit to this administration for is that they have always been open and upfront. When it comes to reforms, they said it would be difficult, that there will be challenges, and they've been transparent about that. They have always assured us that they know the promised land is coming, that we are on a journey. And truly and honestly and truly, there's no reform on earth that doesn't yield some sort of difficult period before it starts to manifest the benefits. Shock therapy is what I believe we've experienced, and the benefits of shock therapy are very rarely in the short term. If they do manifest, they usually manifest themselves in the long term, which is why many people said, was shock therapy the right way to go for Nigeria? So many people have preached for gradualism. Maybe these reforms could have been done in a more gradual way. However, those who stand staunchly with liberal economics are saying that this is the only way, and they celebrate the boldness of the president in doing so. Now, I always like to take a page out of my favorite economist book, that's Joseph Stiglitz, who says that, well, while reforms are necessary, usually they do not yield fruit if there isn't institutional reform happening alongside. So as we begin to assess this administration at 2 years, I thought it would be important for us to look at the institutional reforms that have supported the massive economic reforms that we've seen, the big decisions that were made. So here are some of the parameters that are used to gauge the success of reforms as is seen through the lens of institutional reform. Number one, judicial reform. We know that without a strong judiciary, economic reforms do not yield fruit. Have we seen a commitment to do that? Absolutely. We've seen that this administration has said that they would improve the welfare of the judiciary. We also saw a full Supreme Court bench for the first time in several years. We've also seen the NJC deal with one or two cases here or there of some judges who had acted in unconstitutional ways, and they have been punished. But many Nigerians are asking, in general, these pockets of reforms, these pockets of cases we've seen against one or two judges, have they really resulted in a general overhaul of the judiciary that people are waiting for? That's a question that needs to be asked. The second place we look for reform is regulatory institutions. NNPC was in the headlines for most of the 2 years that we've seen President Tinubu in power. and not for the right reasons. We saw how the poor reform within regulatory institutions can stifle economic reform. NMPC and Dangote's face-off almost cost some of the benefits that we would have wanted to see from the PIA. Now we see that the president has acted decisively. There are some new sheriffs coming into town. The question is, will they be able to do what needs to be done for us to finally see the much-needed change that we have waited decades for in the oil sector? There are refineries we need to look at. We are looking at local production. We are looking at stopping the import. And of course, everybody is asking, where has the subsidy money gone? That's on regulatory institutions. Quickly, we go to social safety nets. Yes, we spoke of conditional cash transfers, but the World Bank has come to say that only 30% of the people who are supposed to benefit from this 25,000 naira to 15 million families, only 30% have received it. Again, where is the money? Let's see accountability. Intention, good intention is not enough. Because remember, they do say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Let's follow through. Let there be an investigation, and let's make sure that this good reform, that this good initiative follows through and results in positive outcomes, social safety nets for the people. We now look at education. In educational reforms, we saw the introduction of NEL Fund. They say 300,000 students have benefited from this, which is fantastic. However, we've also seen all of the corruption that has surrounded NEL Fund in the universities, in various other institutions. So are the number of students who are supposed to benefit from this fund truly enjoying it? Again, institutions, let's see where we need to fix this so that the average man can actually begin to feel the benefits of some of these initiatives. We saw what happened with JAMB recently. Again, it was a point of reflection where we can say that this is where we can institute reforms. So we still wait and see whether something is done, whether there will be a consistent change and not the knee-jerk corrections that we saw in that particular instant. Will there be long-term changes within those organizations that cater to the education of our young people? We go to checks and balances. What is economic reform without checks and balances? The EFCC are saying that in 2024, they recovered 227 billion naira and $105 million, as well as 753 duplexes. However, when most Nigerians think of EFCC, we see that they seem to have been more busy with pursuing people who are spraying naira. We see various high net worth individuals who seem to operate on a system of catch and release. We don't see any follow through in the high profile cases that we're waiting for answers for. So that's on checks and balances. As I round up democratic institutions, the biggest conversation over the past few weeks has been, are we sliding into a one-party state? Has this administration fostered an environment that has allowed for robust dissent, robust interaction, that has allowed for opposition parties to thrive? We're seeing Atiku Abubakar make his comment this morning, and indeed, in many countries, many African countries, dare I say, opposition leaders are not able to say these kinds of statements freely and without the fear of being arrested. However, if we look at the general environment and the fact that we're creeping closer to a two-thirds majority in the National Assembly, we ask ourselves, are democratic institutions catching up to the bold economic reforms that we've set out to embark on? On that note, happy second-year anniversary, President Bola Tinubu.